Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, I see President Biden is in the city and he met with our king a few days ago. Now, the media is all awash with the story that perhaps he broke some royal protocols. First of all, he touched the king on the back. And secondly, he stood in front of the king during one of their little walks so that everyone could see them. Now, Americans are known for being very touchy-feely. Touchy-feely is an adjective. It's two words hyphenated together of touch and feel, and we add y to make them into adjectives. It means people who like to express themselves by hugging or by touching another person, usually innocently. President Biden probably just naturally is very touchy-feely, and he's not alone. I remember Michelle Obama, she hugged the Queen. And also, Jimmy Carter, President Carter of the United States, he kissed the Queen Mother on the lips. Now, for us, we know that our royals should never be touched. You can't make any gesture of physicality with them. The Queen, if she extended her hand to you, you were allowed to touch it. I mean, she would be wearing a glove, of course, because she wouldn't touch the hand of a normal person without wearing a glove. And you were allowed to gently take her fingertips and shake her hand lightly. But if she did not offer her hand to you, then you were not allowed to offer your hand. So my point is this: touchy-feely people, to use the expression touchy-feely, are people who like to hug. Now, in Britain, touchy-feely people are viewed as very over the top with too much emotion. It's a very negative adjective. When I lived in Spain, I became aware that there were touchy-feely people everywhere. But for me, this idea of hugging someone instead of saying hello was completely over the top. It was a level of intimacy I didn't feel comfortable with, and also I'm not entirely sure that some of these hugs were very innocent. Most of them were, but there was a few of them that left me feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and I don't know why. Maybe that was my own insecurities, or maybe there was something there which was not entirely innocent. I don't know. So it got to a point where when people would approach me to hug me, I would take a step back and say, I don't hug, I'm British, sorry. And it seemed to kind of offend people, but that was just the way I was feeling. I don't know why British people are not touchy-feely people. Our royals definitely have something to do with that. Our religious history has definitely something to do with that. And our work ethic probably is another reason. Because we've been trained to work, not hug. And anything which is a distraction to that, or anything which might raise some kind of, let's say, romantic intercourse, would be heavily discouraged because it would take your energy and your view away from what you should be doing, serving your nation. So it's all part of our history. Younger people today, it seems to me, are much more comfortable with hugging than my generation ever was. However, when I see younger people hugging, I can still see a tenseness and a kind of nervousness about it. I don't think any of us really like it, but I think we've just learned how to do it because we are dominated by American media. British people were never really touchy-feely, and those of us who were, thankfully, during COVID, had to learn not to be again. I am aware, of course, that different nationalities do things different ways, but I'm still very uncomfortable with touchy-feely people, and as I see them approaching, I tend to take a step back and sometimes just have to say loudly, don't. Just don't. And that gives them a very strong message not to hug me. It might seem rude, but it gets the message across. If you work in the UK, you might hear phrases like, I really like my friend Jane, but she's very touchy-feely. I like my boss, but he's a bit touchy-feely, which makes me uncomfortable. When British people say this, they're not saying that they're being violated by someone. They're just saying that the person is maybe hugging too much or uses physical contact instead of simple words. Instead of saying hello, they hug you, for example. Now, that might not be appropriate at work anyway, but generally, to be touchy-feely in the UK is considered a little bit negative. I remember when I traveled in the Arab world, that's another place where people are very touchy-feely. They hug each other all the time. Of course, in this case, I'm referring to men because you know they have very strong segregation rules culturally and legally in different parts of the Arab world. One thing that often surprised me is where people can be touchy-feely. I mean, in which place? For example, in the UK, we're not really touchy-feely people, but one place that you would never be touchy-feely is in a church or in a mosque, for example, or any religious place. But yet, in Spain, they didn't seem to care where they were touchy-feely. They saw someone they wanted to say hello to, they went to them and hugged them. Whereas here, the last place you would hug anyone would be in a church. And then in Arabia, a place which has these very strict rules, men were hugging each other and holding hands and all of these things in the mosque. And I was scratching my head thinking, oh, these people are very touchy-feely, which I can understand, but is it really okay to be touchy-feely here? And these, of course, were my own insecurities, because British, Anglo-Saxon or Celtic males are taught how to be strong and how you should never show emotion. So hugging people was kind of a new thing for me. I think in Spain for the first 6 months, I was okay with hugging people, but then I reached a point where I just thought, you know what? I'm hugging all these people and I really don't feel comfortable with that. So I became Joseph the Bubble Boy and just took a step back and said words like, I'm sorry, I don't hug. I'm British, I don't hug. And people could see that. And although it may have offended some people, it made me understand more about myself and about others. I'm really not a touchy-feely person. Despite being married to a South American, where I'm kind of required to give hugs for no reason during the day, I'm still really uncomfortable with it, but perhaps getting better. So that's it. That's the meaning of being touchy-feely. Before I finish, I need to tell you about the word touchy. If you use the word touchy without including the last bit, feely, it means sensitive. My mother was very touchy about certain things that I knew I couldn't discuss with her. My colleague at work seems to be very touchy, so I don't really want to talk to them. They get angry very easily. So you can be touchy about some things, or you could just describe someone as being touchy, meaning highly, highly sensitive, not someone you can approach easily. So that's it from me. If you have a British neighbour or a British person that you know in your life, I recommend that you don't hug them, or at least try to have a dialogue with them about it before you do it. But don't just approach them to kiss them or hug them, because you might find that they really don't know what to do with that or how to react. And they may misinterpret your hug as something romantic. Okay, that's it from me. See you. Bye.